Welcome back to Focus Today, and delighted to have back with. In fact, I finished his book about a week ago, and I have to tell you, I read it and then I reread it and I made some lines in it, but you got to get it. It's called The Great News for America. And what a joy to have back with us today Dr. Gerard Lameiro. He's a philosopher, economist, engineer, and the author of a book that just makes so much sense. One of the guys that kind of predicted the outcome of the primary races going into this election cycle. There's a picture of it there on the screen. Good to see you, my friend. How you doing?
I am doing fantastically well, and it's wonderful to talk to you. I enjoyed our two conversations this summer very much.
Well, thank you, sir. I have to commend you on your book. You know, I get so beat up with the news and all the bad stuff. It was nice to read your book.
Well, good. I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Let's talk about our good friend Phyllis Schlafly. I know that you've had some time with her.
Yes, I was interviewed by Phyllis last year for an hour on her radio program, a full hour. We got a chance to talk about the issues of the day, and she was a bright, intelligent host. She asked tough questions, but very intelligent, in-depth questions. I was amazed at how bright and alert she was. She was 90 years old. I was interviewed by her before her birthday, which is, I think, August 15th. And so I talked to her when she's 90. She died on Labor Day, on Monday, at the age of 92, having just had her 92nd birthday in August.
Well, a fascinating lady. She headed up Eagle Forum. The first time I met Phyllis Schlafly, she was appointed by President Reagan to head up the bicentennial of the Constitution.
That's right.
And I was the state chairman for Oregon, and so we connected there. And then one of my great memories, and I said it twice this morning on the air, we were at the Republican National Convention. This was for the first election of George W. Bush. I had no idea this was happening. Phyllis Schlafly was on my left, and Henry Hyde was on my right, and we were sitting in the platform committee meeting trying to protect the right of the unborn, and she was making forth a motion, but you couldn't do a motion and an amendment at the same time. She says, I'm going to put forth the motion, and she wrote out the amendment and wanted me to stand up immediately and make an amendment to it, because she was really smart. She knew how the system worked. And we got that through, by the way, and it was for the pro-life plank on the platform for that year's convention.
She has done a lot for the pro-life and also pro-family movements. And you mentioned her Eagle Forum. Right now, I think it has about 80,000 members, which I think is just phenomenal. And she started that from scratch. And I go back and I remember her when I was in high school. This will date me, in 1964. And I took classes, did homework, and when I had free time, I campaigned for Barry Goldwater. So I'm a lifelong conservative. And I remember her book coming out, A Choice, Not an Echo. And do you know, in those days, people, when they wanted to publish a book, you had to go to a mainstream publisher, you know, a big publisher to get your book published, but she didn't. She went and self-published back in 1964, and she sold, believe it or not, 3 million copies of a self-published book. Amazing.
She was, and maybe you can help us define this, Dr. Lamero, and that is, she was a true conservative. And I ask people today, what is a conservative? And you get a variety of answers. But whether it was the social issues, issues on the economy, and even issues as it related to the military, she was an incredible conservative. How would you describe her form of conservatism?
Well, I think it was very traditional. She believed in the Constitution. When she battled the ERA, the Equal Rights Amendment, she said all the rights people need are already written down in the Constitution. And so she was almost like a modern day founding father. I guess you could call her a founding mother. And I think she believed in morality and freedom. And she believed in things like religious freedom in a big way. And by the way, people who want to learn more about her, I recommend reading 2 books. She wrote 27 or 28 books. I recommend going back to the 1964 book, which has a 50-year update, anniversary issue, A Choice, Not an Echo. And then she had a brand new book come out this week, The Conservative Case for Trump. And she lists 10 vitally important reasons why Trump is a conservative who should be elected president and who's going to make a much better president than most people realize, because she believes he is a true, in the heart conservative.
You know, she jumped on his bandwagon early and took a lot of flack for it. And of course, as you said, the book came out just this week. What did she see in Trump that we didn't see yet?
Well, I think she sees his heart. You know, I think she sees a good heart who is a person who may have strayed here and there, but, you know, almost everyone has made mistakes in their life. But I think she really believed that he had the best interest of the nation and you're right, the Eagle Forum, some of the people who were very solidly conservative endorsed Senator Cruz, and they felt that Trump wasn't, an ideologically pure conservative, and they were true. I mean, he came out of a business background, not a politician's background. He wasn't a student of the Constitution, as many of us are. But yet, on the other hand, he had kind of a populist, in your heart, know what's right, know what's wrong kind of conservatism. And by the way, let me tell you something. One of the most important reasons for this presidential election is to name basically a new Supreme Court. We have most likely during the tenure of the next president 4 appointments to the Supreme Court, possibly 5, because Clarence Thomas has said he doesn't want to die in office, so he could retire early. So 4 or 5 appointments is going to remake the Supreme Court until the year 2050 at least. And do you know that Phyllis Schlafly is one of the main advisors on the list of nominees, potential nominees to the Supreme Court that Donald Trump put out a few months ago? She was the advisor to Donald Trump. And let me tell you, I vetted all 11 of those people to find out if they were truly conservative, and they are rock-solid constitutional conservatives.
Wow. Interesting thing about Phyllis, she graduated from high school and college in the 40s, but she went back to college to get her law degree. Was it in the early 70s?
I forget the year now, but I believe you're correct that she went back a little bit later to get it. And she also managed to find the time to raise 6 children, 3 of whom became attorneys. One became, I think, an orthopedic surgeon, and another one was a business lady, and another one of her children was a PhD mathematician. So I think she did okay as far as getting her kids off to productive lives.
In her law studies, she primarily zeroed in on constitutional law.
Well, she was really good in that area, especially as applied to rights and also maintaining things like family structure. She was against the ERA, and by the way, I would give her a lot of credit for the ERA going down. She felt that it would tend to break up the family structure. She thought that things like private bathrooms for women might go the way that the leftists are trying to do now, basically not recognize genders. She was way ahead of her time, and she was protecting the nation at that time from some far left ideas, which are still being pushed by some of the leftists today.
Well, I've had the honor of interviewing on many occasions, and she would say things like that were so far out there, you just had a hard time wrapping your brain around it. But it's kind of like she saw it coming. It was almost like she had a prophetic eye. She could see this stuff coming. Is that true?
Absolutely. She was decades ahead in terms of her knowledge. Remember, this is a lady who's written, I think this book this week was number 28. She's also been to 500 college campuses and debated conservative principles, pro-life, pro-family principles. She testified before Congress, I think, about 50 times. She did thousands and thousands of articles and tens of thousands of speeches. I mean, this was a person who not only saw what was coming and understood it, but she was out there in the front lines battling the left's philosophy and ideology, which is, I think, done a lot of damage to this country despite her efforts. And that, but I think that the metamorphosis, the transformation is going to be back to our founding principles that are based in morality and based in freedom. And that's what Great News for America, the book, is about. And by the way, those 10 predictions all seem to be coming true. The realignments of the party, the fact that we're going to have a conservative landslide, that was one of my predictions, and I think that's happening. We haven't talked about the poll today because we're talking about Phyllis, but you know, the poll numbers are starting to move almost every day. I couldn't believe it. Hillary's average numbers dropped 0.2% yesterday morning, and I was doing shows all day yesterday. Later in the day, she dropped another 2 points. I couldn't believe it. I mean, she, you know, every time I look around, her numbers are lower, and it's amazing. And these polls, in my view, are not that accurate because they don't include enough variables that I like to study and put into forecasts and that. But right now, in terms of the polls, Hillary is slightly ahead, but certainly within the 4.7% margin of error. She's ahead in some polls by 1%, some polls 2%, some polls it's the reverse. Trump is ahead by 1 or 2%. So they are in a virtual tie within the margin of error. But I think all of these polls are fundamentally off and are undercutting Trump by about 5%. I think right now, and I made this statement yesterday for the first time in the media, people usually ask me, well, who would win if the election were held today? For the first time yesterday, I said Donald Trump would win today. And that's how I feel the polls really should be reporting, except they don't include all the variables that I include.
All right, let me take a break here. By the way, you need to get a copy of this book. You need something to kind of put some positiveness back into your thinking. This is a great book, and it's called Great News for America. And let me encourage you to check it out at the bookstores. By the way, greatnewsforamerica.com is his website. You can go there as well. I got a lot of questions. We'll be right back, and we'll continue on.
I'm Paulina Leiser, producer of Focus Today. Thank you for watching this video, and make sure to check our other videos at theDove.us.
Welcome back to Focus Today, and what a delight and an honor to have back with us Dr. Gerard Lameiro. He's a philosopher, an economist, an engineer, and the author of a great book. I just can't say enough about this book. It's called Great News for America, and he not only shows his prediction that came through to be true as it came through the primary season, but where we are going into this election cycle. And I'm going to have him highlight this in a minute. We talked briefly about our late good friend Phyllis Schlafly, who passed away this past Monday at the age of 92, president at Weigel Forum, one of the true conservatives in America that really changed the course in a lot of ways and fought valiantly across the board on all the levels. And she had time before she passed away, very suddenly, The Conservative Case for Trump. And here's a copy of the book here. It's a small little book. She co-authored it with Ed Martin and Brett Decker. We hope to get one of those folks on to talk about the book, but you may want to pick it up. All right, Dr. Lamero, let me ask you this. It's been said, and maybe you kind of point to this a little bit in your book, that this case is the last chance to keep America from going over the edge into a total socialistic state. Do you believe that?
I believe that is true, but I don't think we have any concern. I think the American people are going to elect a conservative in a landslide victory in November. I think everything points to that fact from history, from long-term metrics. Metrics are like measurements or statistics, short-term as well. So I'm confident that we're going to go forward, and the book is positive, it's optimistic, but that's because I have an optimistic vision reading the numbers and reading history. And that I believe that many conservatives, and I think Phyllis would be part of this group, felt that this might be the last chance for America to really turn the corner on socialism, because we have been going down a socialist path the past 7 years very quickly, doing lots of damage to institutions. We continue to do that. And by the way, the economy. Remember, what I said in my very first book is still true. Socialism, and believe me, progressive socialism is a form of socialism. Socialism always leads to two things: moral bankruptcy and economic bankruptcy. And you can see how our economy is stuttering along, anemic growth. I think the tax plan, for example, that Hillary is proposing, $1.3 trillion tax increase, as if we have too much money in our pockets right now, I think that will lead to another major recession in her term. So I think we would continue the downhill spiral this country is in. Most people think it's off track, about 60 to 67%. One poll, 70% Americans think we're off track. I think the downhill slide will continue, but I don't think that's going to happen. I think that the voter turnout and other metrics, statistics, and that point to the fact Americans are going to come out and they are going to support Trump, and they're going to elect Trump, and we're going to have a new era in the next 20 years.
People are saying now, where in the past, the scandals that surrounded the Clintons turns into a fatigue that people just kind of step away and don't do anything, and they win by default. However, the Clinton fatigue factor now has turned in another direction, almost into the anger and frustration, which plays right into Trump. Do you think that's true?
Well, actually, you're very perceptive to pick that out. There is a Clinton fatigue, but it's actually playing against her in this election. Let me tell you why. One of the things the Democrats would love to do is replicate Obama's success in getting voter turnout among African Americans. It turns out they're just turned off on her big time, and a low black turnout, which is one of the groups that Democrats tend to do well on, they're not doing as well this time, but they're just not going to vote. They're going to stay home because there's no incentive. They are tired of her. What we're finding listening to voters across the country are things like, well, I'm used to voting Democrat. However, I really have a hard time voting for somebody that I think is fundamentally corrupt. And I have a hard time voting for somebody that I think is dishonest with me. And I think I'm just going to stay home. A few of them, believe it or not, are switching to Gary Johnson, which is sort of a drastic change. But for every 3 new voters that go to Gary Johnson, the Libertarian candidate, 2 are from Hillary, and 1 is from Trump, who just is a little bit turned off on Trump's style. Jill Stein isn't doing very well at all. She's not getting the votes. You'd think she would have gotten Bernie Sanders votes, but it's funny that Gary Johnson seems to be picking up the people dropping off from Hillary. So at any rate, I really think that voter turnout is going to be a critical variable in this election. Hispanics are turned off. Millennials are turned off. 20% may switch to one of the third parties, and a lot of the rest of the millennials are thinking up to maybe 50% may just sit out the election because they're not enthusiastic about either candidate, which leaves the baby boomers to help to determine the winner, and they largely support Trump.
Let me ask you this, Dr. Lamero, because Newt Gingrich said the other day that if Trump either gets them to vote for him or not vote at all, and we're talking 10 to 15% of the black and Hispanic community, that swings the election to him, even if he doesn't pick up Ohio or Florida. You think that's true?
It looks pretty certain he's going to get Ohio at the moment. Now, remember, there's 2 kinds of things here. We have current day polls that are relatively new that we use to help predict the election. But then we have forecasting techniques which say, given where we are today, given how things are moving, where will we be on November 8th? So there's 2 kinds of predictions here. the short term and the long term. And I agree with what Newt has said recently, and that I absolutely think that the voter blocs mean a lot. They're also changing in their alignment to the Democratic Party, which I predicted in the book, and it's happening. And so I think what you're going to see, high voter turnout among Christians, high voter turnout amongst those who really care about the Constitution and the country and going off track, and low turnout from traditional Democratic voters and from minority voters who normally vote in bloc for the Democrats.
Let me ask you this. It's just been my layman's observation. It appears that the DNC, not overtly, but it seems to be swinging its attention to the Senate and House seats because Hillary's just flawed. And if they got to spend money, they got to stay in control somehow. Is that a possibility?
No, I don't think they've got much chance of carrying the Senate or the House at the current state. And that, individual races will vary. The politics gets local a lot of times, personalities matter. But overall, it looks like it's going to be a strong conservative year. And if anything, you're going to see a few more conservatives in Congress.
All right, let me ask you this. What does Donald Trump do with a $20 billion trust, a $20 billion plus deficit the day he takes office?
Well, I think he has to start from day one following conservative principles. He needs to work very much on the growth of the economy. His tax plan, which was put together by some of the people who are supply-siders and understand growth, of which I put myself in that category, I endorse his tax plan because I think it'd be great for growing the economy. With a 3 or 4% GDP growth, which I think is sustainable and doable, given the Trump approach, which is a conservative economic approach, I think deficits will tend to start shrinking. Revenues to the government go up. When the economy is good, it also helps the government and helps to get the government back in order. But, things like that, economic programs take about 2 years to really kick in. Although if people understand you're serious, they'll start making economic decisions differently.
You think you'll see some of the sideline money be reinvested?
Reinvested in where?
Well, back into American business. I only got about 30 seconds.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of the things he's doing are going to bring a lot more jobs into this country. My prediction would be now, if Trump is elected, you will not recognize our economy. It'll be so good in 8 years.
Dr. Lamero, it's always a joy to have you, sir. Look forward to more visits. And let me encourage our viewers, get a copy of this book, Good News for America. It is encouraging, it's positive, and check it out. And go to his website, goodnewsforamerica.com. Thank you, my friend. Let's connect again soon, okay?
Great news for America.
Great news, excuse me. Yeah, great news for America. There we go. All right, God bless you, my friend. See you soon.
God bless you.
Okay, we'll see you next time on Focus Today.